This wave is actually pretty good. I know I was hard on the last wave, but that's just because I knew Nintendo could make some worthwhile tracks, such as these. So much care was put into this wave. I mean, Nintendo made a new track, and an actual new track at that, not a fraudulently new track like when Nintendo Forgot Ninja Hideaway came from Mario Kart Tour, Kalimari Desert, Waluigi Pinball, Mushroom Gorge, Mario Circuit 3 that we all remember from Mario Kart Wii. Sydney Sprint and New York Minute are good representations from the game banned in Belgium and Vietnam. Snowland's the obvious black sheep here because literally who played Super Circuit, and of course Sky High Sundae, the Nitro track. Anyway, like last time, we're gonna give these tracks a shakedown and see what makes them tick. But before we get into it, if you like what you see, make sure you click that fun little subscribe button. It's quick, easy, and free, and helps me make more videos like the one you're watching. And again, huge shoutouts to the following channels for footage used in this video. As with before, I couldn't figure out how to play the old Mario Kart Tour tracks, so this archival footage is the best I could muster. Let's get into it. New York Minute from Mario Kart Tour. This retro track, much like Paris Promenade and Tokyo Blur from Wave 1, combines New York Minute's Nitro track variations into one complete track. To do so, the track employs the tactic first seen in Tokyo Blur, in which every lap follows a different layout, each based on one Nitro track variant. The first lap, for instance, follows the layout from New York Minute 1, adding in Goombas to the park. After re-entering the city, the track diverges, implementing the routes from both New York Minute 1 and 2, although the glide ramp has been made optional. In addition, a bus and 2 taxi cabs are added to this part of the track. The second lap follows the layout from New York Minute 2, while maintaining the fork from the first lap, and the third lap follows the layout from New York Minute 3. This track is pretty good, actually. Yeah, it has the lazy red arrows I was critical of last time, but there was a modicum of effort put into the track so I can turn the other cheek today. Goombas were added, the vehicles add in a layer of depth, even if they're all illegally parked. The water spouts look far more realistic, and a lot of the textures look nicer. Sure, the grass and trees still have a weird plastic look, but for the most part, this track is at least on par with the original 48 tracks. And the more I play tracks of this style, the more I like them. Call it Exchange of Heart, call it Stockholm Syndrome, I like them now. SNES Mario Circuit 3, a track I remember fondly from Mario Kart Wii. So what's going on here? Well, you got Toads and Yoshis watching the race from some retro-inspired blocks. It's cute, but seems like a major safety issue to me. Like, if one of these blockheads take a tumble, the circuit is gonna face a huge lawsuit. Also, how'd they even get up here? Were there ladders or a helicopter deal, or maybe these fellas just got mad hops? The oil spills have now been marked with some safety cones and should be cleaned up as soon as the race is over. Other than that, boy howdy, this is still Mario Circuit 3. Not much has been added or changed, which, while not a bad thing, is a little disappointing. Look at what they did to Donut Plains 2 or GBA Mario Circuit, and you can't help but feel a little ripped off. Anyway, this one's fine. While it's nothing special that brings back a Mario Kart Wii classic and doesn't mess it up, so it's whatever. And whoa, this track's also in Mario Kart Tour? Huda! N64 Kalimari Desert, a totally endearing track that won me over as a child. Its lonely, empty expanse dotted with mesas made me envious that Lakitu wouldn't let me explore them. Driving through the train tunnel was a little kid staple, although I always wondered who or what was being transported in a place as desolate as this. A lot of the modifications made to this track are ripped right out of its appearance in Mario Kart 7. The glide ramps at the start of the course in between the 2 train crossings, and the little wooden ramps placed along the road. Of course, the strangest modification comes on lap 2. Where'd the ramp come from, dude? Literally, what the heck. We're taking on a trip through the train tunnel, which is kinda underwhelming when you're forced to do so, but I'm probably just being contrarian. And then we start lap 3 and we kinda finish the lap like normal. Going through the tunnel is an element taken from Kalimari Desert in Mario Kart Tour, but the sudden ramp is so jarring and out of place and I hate it so much. Why not just use the red arrows that the Mario Kart Tour retro tracks use? Or the green arrows that are already on this track? Lakitu freaks out around here as well. He's having a really rough time. I don't mind driving through the train tunnel, I just want a more natural way of entering it. Also, the track kinda sorta isn't wide enough, and like I guess it's fun and cool that Kalimari Desert 2 is represented, but I personally don't see the play, coach. Regardless, this track's fine, but I honestly kinda just prefer the Mario Kart 7 iteration. DS Waluigi Pinball is a rather unremarkable take on one of the best Mario Kart DS tracks. The initial launch after the starting line is now a glide ramp, which was taken taken from this track's appearance in Mario Kart 7. You also see some spectators along the course, but other than that, nothing else was changed. One weird little quirk I want to address is how the collision in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe works. Like, if you're at a standstill, these giant pinballs will just kinda go through you. Only if you yourself are moving will these pinballs hurt you. Pretty bizarre. Out of all the tracks in the Turnip Cup, Waluigi Pinball would have benefited the most from a zero gravity section. Going through the nooks and crannies of a pinball machine feels like the perfect zero gravity opportunity. Oh, and what do you know, this track was also in Mario Kart Tour. All things considered, the Turnip Cup is full of zingers. I may not like Kalimari Desert, but even so, it's pretty alright. Now we move into the Propeller Cup. Starting things off, we got Sydney Sprint from Mario Kart Tour. Like with New York Minute, this track combines elements from both of its Nitro Track variants. The first lap follows the layout of Sydney Sprint 1, although this first fountain has been altered a tad. Riveting comparison, I know. The second lap actually introduces a new element to the Sydney Sprint lore, taking us over a ferry and through a quaint little seaside park. We circle back to the train bridge, where we now see it's been covered in these fun little ramps. From here, the layout follows that from Sydney Sprint 2. Then, the third lap follows the layout from Sydney Sprint R, which is pretty fun and cute, I think. Also, the crowd in the Sydney Opera House looks awful. We've seen these same sprite crowd members in 3DS Toad Circuit and Excite Bike Arena, but they were definitely not designed to be seen this up close. All said and done, and having now seen 4 tracks done in this style, I really like that the Tour Retro tracks have different lap layouts. It's definitely the best way to respect the fact that the Nitro tracks have variations, and it's cool that Mario Kart is still willing to experiment with new ways to design tracks. Paris Promenade is the worst of these 4, but Tokyo Blur, New York Minute, and now Sydney Sprint are all really solid. And it's cool that Sydney Sprint takes it upon itself to create a new section of tracks that all 3 laps are distinct. This style of track definitely has its place, but Kalimari Desert is not it. GBA Snowland. I don't have a funny one-liner for this one. Really, when it comes to remaking these Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart Super Circuit tracks, the developers kind of have a blank slate. You could turn this into anything. We start on a snowy ridge and make our way through a pine forest dotted with the most fragile snowmen in the world. From there, we descend to a frozen lake inhabited by some penguins. After hitting a ramp, we return to the road, which no longer has any small ponds to fall into. This dash panel has been removed and a shortcut and little jump have been added. Overall, it's a pretty good track. Enough artistic liberties were taken with it. I like the start line being on a bridge and descending to the frozen lake. Having the only body of water beyond the lake gives some level of cohesion, while the shortcut and 2 jumps give depth. Of course, this game's collision doesn't work the best with these penguins, and Lakitu really freaks out on this track, but otherwise it's a totally unremarkable, decent enough track. And here we are, the reason you clicked on this video, Wii Mushroom Gorge. While nowhere as iconic as Coconut Mall, everyone loves Mario Kart Wii, and Mushroom Gorge is in Mario Kart Wii, ergo, everyone loves Mushroom Gorge. Like with Coconut Mall last time, I'll try to discard my rose-tinted glasses and be as objective as possible. So what do we got going on? Well, first of all, the mushroom shortcut near the starting line is here after being noticeably absent in both Mario Kart 7 and Mario Kart Tour. The second set of mushroom trampolines only has 2, while the path to the left seems to have been shortened, possibly to make there be an actual reason to use that path. In the cave, a glide ramp mushroom trampoline has been added. Okay, now for a nitpick. I don't like the color palette here. It's too much of the standard, gratingly vibrant Mario aesthetic that I've grown tired of over the past decade. I like the more muted palette that the Nitro track has. But that's likely just nostalgia talking, so take that as you will. Overall, this track's fine. It doesn't really do anything different, just makes a couple of tweaks. However, Mushroom Gorge is a good enough track to begin with, so who cares? Last, we have Sky High Sundae, a Nitro track. Wowee! I knew Nintendo had it in them to actually make new content for their video game, even if this track is kinda stinky dog doo-doo. What? I hear you cry. Mr. Cowfood, don't you like anything? No. The colors are too vibrant. It looks like a cross between Luncheon Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey and Sugar Rush from Wreck-It Ralph. Once you leave the little plaza, the camera is too close to your character and it's kind of hard to see what's around you. Also, the jump onto the section beneath feels not good on account of this camera angle. Going up and around this Sundae at the end is plagued by that same camera angle. Also, whenever I see that section, my mind immediately goes to this part of Bowser in the Sky from Mario 64. These railings are nonsensical, you just kind of go through them. Now for some truly psychotic critiques. These stools are too big, this jukebox is ridiculous, everyone's ice cream is gonna melt because because they're all too busy waving at us to eat. Everyone's ice cream is gonna melt because they're all too busy waving at us to eat their stupid treat. Why do you buy it if it's just gonna melt? Actually, how hot is it here anyway? Because clearly the ice cream isn't melting, so why aren't these Toads and Shy Guys bundled up? It's probably pretty chilly. Every business in this plaza is either selling soft serve ice cream or ice pops. Ignoring the highly competitive market they've created, the ground is made out of ice cream, so why are we paying for it? These Shy Guys got stood up. That last one is not a critique, I just wanted to make fun of them. I don't really like this track, if you couldn't tell. I think the theme is kind of boring, the aesthetic an eyesore, and even the zero gravity unnecessary. The entire track is zero gravity, but nothing really necessitates that. If anything, it seems like a way for Nintendo to go, see, we did use zero gravity this time. Regardless, I like this wave a lot more than the first one. The track selection is on par with the first wave. Kalimari Desert, Waluigi Pinball, and Mushroom Gorge are bangers. Mario Circuit 3 is tried and true. Snowland is a deep cut. New York Minute and Sydney Sprint are good representation for Mario Kart Tour, and Sky High Sundae is brand new. The main thing, however, is that these tracks aren't as egregious of ports as Wave 1's. Choco Mountain and Sky Garden were both ripped straight out of Mario Kart Tour. The reason that was so lame was because both those tracks were clearly reworked for Mario Kart Tour in the first place, so it really felt like not only were we getting poor renditions of classic tracks, we were just getting scraps from Mario Kart Tour. Like, literally copy and pasted. So while Mario Circuit 3, Mushroom Gorge, and Waluigi Pinball are more or less unaltered and are all in Mario Kart Tour, at least they weren't downgraded versions of those tracks. The only time we see Mario Kart Tour's residue is with Kalimari Desert, which really stands out like a sore thumb. If anything, Mushroom Gorge, Waluigi Pinball, and Kalimari Desert are all just regurgitated from Mario Kart 7, but that irks me less because of how faithful those tracks were to the original Nitro tracks in the first place. Is this all exceptionally neurotic semantics? Oh, absolutely, but that's what you're here for after all. The tracks in this wave also look nicer, I think. Compare Mario Circuit 3 to Toad Circuit, Sydney Sprint to Tokyo Blur, or Mushroom Gorge to Sky Garden. They still don't look great, the original 48 still look 10 times better, but tracks like New York Minute and Kalimari Desert do actually look nice. None of the tracks really have the gross plastic sheen that most of the tracks from the first wave had, so that's a plus. There's the one Nitro track as well. I think it's the worst track of the lot, but the fact that Nintendo went out of their way to make a new track for this DLC shows that they actually put in some effort with this wave. Either that or my standards have been lowered so dramatically that I can't properly assess quality anymore. And you know what? That's the best way I can sum up Wave 2. There was some care put into these tracks. Fewer were full-on ripped out of Mario Kart Tour, the tracks look nicer, and they even made a new one. Further proof of care can be found by that shortcut being added back in Mushroom Gorge and the new section being added in Sydney Sprint. And while we're on the subject of that track, Sydney Sprint and New York Minute have all but perfected the style of track that has each lap being slightly different, and they've made me completely change my tune on them. In my video on Wave 1, I questioned why Tokyo Blur and Paris Promenade weren't more like Mount Wario or N64 Rainbow Road, but I now realize both types of tracks serve different purposes. The dense track layout of Tokyo Blur is fitting for a street race, while the long continuous layout of Mount Wario is fitting for an epic journey. Every track has a story to tell, and some stories necessitate different styles. Perhaps there was enough backlash from the first wave that Nintendo actually internalized the fact that they still need to make their products good. While these tracks are far from masterpieces and far from even being as good as the original 48 tracks, they are better than the first waves. For that reason alone, I am impressed. I am impressed that Nintendo decided to do more than just the bare minimum. Of course, hopefully Nintendo takes the opportunity to make Wave 3 even better, but I kind of won't bet on it, once bitten and all that. Regardless, these tracks are cool and fun. They don't depress me, they make me wish more was done to them, sure, but as is, they're all fun enough. And I can honestly say I am looking forward to Wave 3. Take care.